What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors sits down for what should be a friendly interview, only to face relentless attacks and condescending remarks that push him to his absolute breaking point? In just 38 seconds of one single comment, Joy Behar's shocking words would cause Samuel L. Jackson to do something he had never done before on live television: walk off a set mid-interview, leaving millions of viewers stunned and the host scrambling to comprehend what she had just done. The morning started like any other episode of The View. The studio audience was buzzing with excitement. Samuel L. Jackson, the legendary actor known for his powerful performances and no-nonsense attitude, was scheduled to appear. He was there to promote his latest film, a passion project that meant everything to him. The audience cheered as he walked onto the stage, waving and smiling, ready for what he thought would be a fun, lighthearted conversation about his career and his new movie. Joy Behar greeted him with a smile, but there was something off about her energy. She seemed dismissive from the very start, barely looking at him as he sat down. The other hosts welcomed him warmly, but Joy cut them off almost immediately, eager to take control of the conversation. "So, Samuel," Joy began, leaning back in her chair with an air of superiority, "you're here to talk about another action movie. Tell me, do you ever get tired of playing the same type of character over and over again?" The audience went quiet. It was a loaded question, one that felt more like an insult than genuine curiosity. Samuel kept his composure, smiling politely. "Well, Joy, I wouldn't say I play the same character," he responded calmly. "Each role I take on has its own depth, its own story. This film in particular is something I'm incredibly proud of because it deals with real issues that matter to me." Joy waved her hand dismissively, as if his answer was irrelevant. Sure, but let's be honest," she interrupted, not even letting him finish his thought. "You basically show up, say some cool lines, and collect a paycheck. I mean, how hard can it really be?" The other hosts exchanged uncomfortable glances. One of them tried to step in. "Joy, I think what Samuel is trying to say is that there's a lot more to his work than." "I'm talking to Samuel," Joy snapped, cutting off her co-host without even looking at her. She turned back to Samuel with a smug expression. "I'm just saying what everyone is thinking. You're not exactly doing Shakespeare out there." Samuel's jaw tightened slightly, but he maintained his professionalism. He took a breath and responded with measured words. "Actually, Joy, I have done Shakespeare. I've done theater. I've done independent films. I've worked in this industry for decades, and I put my heart into every single role. Maybe if you took the time to actually watch my work instead of making assumptions, you'd know that." The audience erupted in applause. They were clearly on Samuel's side, but Joy didn't seem to care. In fact, she seemed annoyed that the audience was supporting him. Her face hardened, and she leaned forward, her voice dripping with condescension. "Oh, come on. Don't be so sensitive," she said, laughing in a way that felt cruel. "I'm just being honest. You're a movie star, not an artist. There's a difference." The other hosts looked horrified. One of them tried to change the subject, asking Samuel about his family, but Joy wasn't done. She talked over her co-host again, determined to keep control of the conversation. "Let me ask you something else," Joy continued, her tone becoming sharper. "You've been in Hollywood for a long time. You've made a lot of money. Don't you think it's a little self-indulgent to keep making these movies when there are real problems in the world? I mean, what are you really contributing to society?" Samuel stared at her, his expression shifting from polite to genuinely stunned. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. The audience was dead silent now, waiting to see how he would respond. "What am I contributing?" Samuel repeated slowly, his voice low but firm. "Joy, I've spent my entire career telling stories that matter. Stories about real people, real struggles. I've used my platform to raise awareness about issues that affect communities that don't always get a voice. So yes, I think I am contributing, and I don't need to justify that to you or anyone else." The audience erupted again, this time even louder. People were standing, clapping, showing their full support for Samuel. But Joy still didn't back down. She rolled her eyes and let out an exaggerated sigh. Okay, calm down everyone," she said, waving her hand at the audience as if they were children. "Look, Samuel, I think you're taking this way too personally. I'm just asking questions. That's what we do here. If you can't handle a little criticism, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews." That comment hit a nerve. Samuel's expression changed completely. The warmth that had been in his eyes when he first walked out was gone. Now there was only frustration and disappointment. He looked at Joy with a mixture of disbelief and pity. "Criticism?" Samuel said quietly. "Joy, criticism is when someone offers thoughtful feedback. What you're doing is being disrespectful. There's a difference. And honestly, I expected better from someone in your position. Joy's face flushed red. She wasn't used to being called out, especially not on her own show. Her voice became defensive, almost shrill. Excuse me, I've been doing this for years. I've interviewed presidents, world leaders, celebrities far bigger than you. Don't sit here and tell me how to do my job. Then maybe you should start acting like a professional, Samuel shot back, his voice still calm but with an edge of steel. Because right now, you're acting like someone who has no respect for the people sitting across from you. The other hosts were frozen. The audience was completely silent, watching this confrontation unfold in real time. Joy's face was now bright red, her hands gripping the edge of the table. She was losing control of the situation, and she knew it. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. You know what your problem is? Joy said, her voice rising. You think you're above criticism. You think because you're Samuel L. Jackson, you can just walk in here and we're all supposed to bow down and praise you. Well, newsflash, I don't care who you are. You're on my show and I'll ask whatever questions I want. Samuel looked at her for a long moment. Then he did something that shocked everyone in the studio. He stood up. He calmly removed his microphone, placed it on the table, and looked directly at Joy. You're absolutely right, Joy, he said, his voice steady and clear. This is your show. And you know what? You can have it. I don't need to sit here and be disrespected. I came here to have a conversation, not to be attacked. So I'm done. The studio went completely silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Joy's mouth fell open, but no words came out. The other hosts looked at each other in shock. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of this unprecedented moment. Samuel turned to the audience and gave them a small smile and a wave. They immediately stood up and applauded him, their cheers filling the studio. He walked off the stage with his head held high, his dignity intact, leaving Joy sitting at the table, speechless and humiliated. As he disappeared backstage, Joy finally found her voice, but it was weak and defensive. Well, she stammered, trying to regain control, I guess some people just can't handle tough questions. But no one was listening to her. The other hosts were silent, clearly upset with how Joy had handled the situation. The audience was still buzzing, talking amongst themselves about what they had just witnessed. And somewhere backstage, Samuel L. Jackson was walking out of the building, knowing he had done the right thing. The incident became the talk of the industry within hours. Clips of the confrontation spread across social media like wildfire. People couldn't believe what they had seen. Samuel L. Jackson, one of the most professional and respected actors in Hollywood, had been pushed so far that he walked off a live television show. And the overwhelming response was clear. Everyone was on Samuel's side. But let's rewind and look at how this disaster unfolded moment by moment, because the full picture reveals just how calculated Joy's behavior was and how patient Samuel had been before reaching his breaking point. When Samuel first sat down, he was genuinely excited to be there. He had prepared stories about his new film, funny anecdotes from set, and meaningful insights about the themes of the movie. He wanted to connect with the audience and share his passion. But from the very first question, Joy made it clear she had a different agenda. So tell me, Joy had said after that initial dismissive question about action movies, do you actually read the scripts before you sign on, or do you just look at the paycheck? Samuel had laughed it off, thinking maybe she was joking. Of course I read the scripts, he replied with a smile. I'm very selective about the projects I choose. Really? Joy responded, her eyebrows raised in exaggerated disbelief. Because it seems like you're in everything. How selective can you really be if you're doing 5-6 movies a year? The audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't playful banter. This was an attack. But Samuel remained gracious. I'm fortunate enough to work consistently, he explained. And yes, I do a lot of films, but each one is chosen carefully. I work with directors I respect, on stories that resonate with me. Joy wasn't satisfied. She kept pushing, kept prodding, looking for a crack in his armor. She asked him about his age, suggesting he was too old to be doing action movies. She questioned his motives, implying he was only in it for the money. She even brought up other actors, comparing him unfavorably to them. Don't you think actors like Denzel Washington have more range than you? She asked at one point, her voice dripping with false innocence. I mean, he does serious dramas, wins Oscars. What have you really accomplished in comparison? That question was particularly cruel. Samuel and Denzel are friends, colleagues, and mutual admirers of each other's work. Joy was trying to create division where none existed, and she was doing it purely for her own entertainment. Denzel is an incredible actor and a good friend, Samuel responded, his voice tight but controlled. But we have different careers, different paths. There's no competition between us, and I'm not going to let you create one. Joy smirked, pleased that she was getting under his skin. She could see his patience wearing thin, and instead of backing off like any decent person would, she pushed harder. I'm just saying, maybe you should try doing something more serious, she continued. Something that actually challenges you. Or are you afraid you can't handle it? The other hosts were visibly upset now. One of them, trying to salvage the interview, turned to Samuel with a kind smile. Samuel, I loved your work in that independent film you did a few years ago, she said warmly. Can you tell us about that experience? But before Samuel could answer, Joy cut in again. Oh please, nobody saw that movie, she said dismissively. Let's talk about something relevant. That was the moment when one of the other hosts actually spoke up against Joy. Joy, that's incredibly rude, she said firmly. Samuel is our guest, and we should treat him with respect. Joy turned on her co-host with a glare. I am being respectful. I'm asking him real questions, not just blowing smoke. If he can't handle that, maybe he's in the wrong business. Samuel watched this exchange, and something shifted in his eyes. He realized that Joy wasn't just having a bad day or being thoughtlessly rude. She was deliberately trying to humiliate him. She was using her position of power as the host to tear him down, and she was enjoying it. Joy, Samuel said, his voice calm but firm. I've been in this business for over 30 years. I've faced rejection, criticism, and challenges you can't even imagine. I've earned my place in this industry through hard work, dedication, and talent. I don't need to prove myself to you or anyone else, and I certainly don't need to sit here and listen to you try to tear me down for your own amusement. The audience erupted in applause, but Joy just laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. Oh, here we go, she said, rolling her eyes. The victim card. Classic. Look, Samuel, if you're going to be a public figure, you need to have thicker skin. Not everyone is going to kiss your feet. I'm not asking anyone to kiss my feet, Samuel replied, his voice rising slightly. I'm asking for basic respect. That's not too much to ask. Respect is earned. Joy shot back. And frankly, I don't think someone who just plays tough guys in movies has really earned. She didn't get to finish that sentence because Samuel stood up right then. That was the moment. That was when he decided he had heard enough. Joy's face went from smug to shocked in an instant. She clearly hadn't expected him to actually leave. Wait, what are you doing? She asked, her voice suddenly uncertain. Samuel didn't answer her. He just calmly removed his microphone and set it down. The silence in the studio was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop. Samuel, come on, Joy said, trying to laugh it off, but her voice was shaking. Don't be so dramatic. Sit down. We're just having a conversation. Samuel looked at her, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet but powerful. No, Joy, we're not having a conversation. You've been attacking me from the moment I sat down. You've insulted my work, questioned my integrity, and disrespected me as a person. I don't know what I did to deserve that, but I'm not going to sit here and take it anymore. I have too much respect for myself. He turned to the other hosts and nodded politely. Ladies, thank you for trying to make this pleasant. I appreciate your kindness. Then he turned to the audience. Thank you all for being here. I'm sorry you had to witness this. The audience stood and applauded him, many of them actually cheering. Some were even wiping tears from their eyes, moved by his dignity and grace under pressure. As he walked toward the exit, Joy called after him, her voice desperate now. Samuel, this is ridiculous. You're overreacting. Come back here and finish the interview like a professional. Samuel stopped and turned back to face her one last time. What he said next would become one of the most quoted moments in television history. A professional, he said, his voice echoing through the silent studio. Joy, I've been nothing but professional. I came here prepared, excited to talk about my work, ready to engage with you and your audience. But you decided to use this platform to try and humiliate me. That's not professional. That's cruel, and I won't be a part of it. With that, he turned and walked off the stage. The cameras followed him until he disappeared through the exit. Then they cut back to the host table, where Joy sat in stunned silence, her face pale, her hands trembling slightly. One of the other hosts tried to move on, suggesting they go to a commercial break, but Joy wasn't ready to let it go. I can't believe he just walked out, she said, her voice a mixture of anger and disbelief. That's so unprofessional. I was just doing my job." The other host, who had defended Samuel earlier, spoke up again, her voice firm. "Joy, you weren't doing your job. You were being cruel. And honestly, I don't blame him for leaving. I would have left too." Joy's mouth dropped open. She looked around at her other co-hosts, expecting support, but found none. They all looked away, uncomfortable and clearly upset with how the situation had been handled. The show went to commercial, and when they came back, Joy had composed herself somewhat. But the damage was done. The energy in the studio was completely different. The audience was subdued, still processing what they had witnessed. The other hosts were distant, barely engaging with Joy, and Joy herself seemed smaller somehow, less confident, as if she was beginning to realize the magnitude of what she had done. They tried to continue with the rest of the show, bringing out another guest, but it was pointless. Everyone was still thinking about Samuel. Everyone was still replaying those final moments in their minds. The walk-off had overshadowed everything else. Meanwhile, backstage, Samuel was talking with his publicist. He was calm, surprisingly so, given what had just happened. When asked if he regretted walking out, he shook his head. "Not for a second," he said quietly. "I've spent my entire career being professional, showing up, doing the work, treating people with respect, and I expect the same in return. Life's too short to let people disrespect you, especially when you've done nothing to deserve it." His publicist asked if he wanted to make a statement about what happened. Samuel thought for a moment, then nodded. "Just say that I came to The View to have a conversation about my work, but instead I was met with hostility and disrespect. I chose to remove myself from that environment because I believe in treating people with dignity, and I expect the same for myself. That's all." Back in the studio, Joy was trying to spin the situation, suggesting to the audience that Samuel couldn't handle tough questions, that he was being oversensitive, that she had done nothing wrong, but no one was buying it. The audience remained quiet, and her co-host refused to support her narrative. What Joy didn't understand, what she failed to grasp in her arrogance, was that there's a difference between asking tough questions and being disrespectful. Tough questions come from a place of genuine curiosity and a desire to understand. They challenge the guest in meaningful ways and create interesting dialogue. What Joy did was something else entirely. She attacked Samuel personally, questioned his talent, dismissed his accomplishments, and tried to humiliate him on live television. And Samuel, who had spent decades dealing with far worse treatment in an industry that wasn't always kind to actors who looked like him, who had fought his way to the top through sheer talent and determination, wasn't going to sit there and be diminished by someone who had never walked a day in his shoes. The walk-off wasn't about ego. It wasn't about being unable to handle criticism. It was about self-respect. It was about knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone make you feel less than. It was about drawing a line and saying, "This is where I stand, and I won't cross it, not for anyone." As the show finally ended and the credits rolled, Joy sat at the table, still trying to process what had happened. Her co-hosts got up and left quickly, barely acknowledging her. The audience filed out, many of them talking animatedly about what they had witnessed. And Joy was left alone, finally understanding that she had made a terrible mistake. But the lesson came too late. The moment was captured forever, saved on video, shared across the internet, analyzed and discussed by millions, and the verdict was unanimous. Samuel L. Jackson had been right to walk out. He had been right to stand up for himself. And Joy Behar had been wrong, so very wrong, in how she had treated him. This wasn't just a celebrity walking off a talk show. This was a powerful statement about respect, dignity, and knowing when enough is enough. Samuel L. Jackson showed the world that day that success doesn't mean you have to tolerate disrespect. That being professional doesn't mean being a doormat. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away. And as he left that building, head held high, he proved once again why he's not just a movie star, but a true icon, not because of the roles he's played or the money he's made, but because of the integrity he carries with him everywhere he goes. Because when pushed to his limit, when faced with someone determined to tear him down, he chose grace over anger, dignity over retaliation, and self-respect over playing along.